Hello, welcome to Season 11 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. This season, in each episode, we will not both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about it later. We have 10 previous seasons of doing exactly that, and it's time for something new. This season, each episode will focus on a larger horror topic, trend, or maybe even rumor. We'll speculate about upcoming movies, debate genre definitions, and do our best to apply the perspective of two people who have watched way too many horror movies to different types of horror media. Thanks for coming along for the ride. A few weeks ago, we talked about some of our most anticipated releases of 2022.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to go back and revisit one that we missed on that list because it had technically already come out, and I figured we'd do an episode at some point, but it just kind of made sense to work it in today. And then the other is I went and saw Black Phone over the weekend. So I am going to interview you about the movie X, and you are going to interview me about the Black Phone.
Love it.
And full disclosure, I did watch X because it was finally available for rental on Amazon Prime. And I am not going to inject any of my opinions. We have not talked about it. I am going to come at it as if I know nothing about it. But I'm really interested to hear your opinion on it. Well, I can't say what I was going to say because I don't want to influence it because I just said I wasn't going to.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, and to clarify too, I have not seen either movie. I'm just winging it.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yep. I didn't realize that this was technically a test since you've seen it. I was just going to make up a plot line.
Oh, okay. Well, still do that. It'll make it more fun for me. I'll try to keep up.
Yeah, that sounds good.
But yes, you watched the movie X, and that came out earlier this year. And the way that it got on my radar is I had seen previews for it while seeing another movie. I can't remember what it was a while back. And then Sarah and a couple of her friends actually went to see it. Sarah did not know what it was. One of her friends is a fan of horror movies and suggested it, and they went. And she came back and said, you and Brice have to watch this movie. But then we went out of town or something, and it was gone from theaters by the time we got back. So I didn't really have anything to go on, but she apparently thought that this would be a movie that you were super into. So I'm curious to hear if that's the case. But first of all, why don't you give me just a super high-level overview of what the movie was about?
Yeah. So the film is about a film crew going out to the middle of nowhere. I think this was in the 70s. That's a guess. But they decided they're going to get their big break by filming this pornographic film called The Farmer's Daughter out in the country. And it's basically owned by a really old couple. One of their names is Pearl. The lady's name is Pearl, and her husband's name I don't remember. Howard, I'm guessing. Anyway, they're super creepy, super creepy, and it's just basically kind of how they're. I don't know how to say with it. Basically, it's a slasher film set out in the middle of nowhere, Texas, kind of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but more nudity and some pretty brutal killing. And it's just that they're trapped. Did I explain that all right?
Yeah, makes sense to me. So the premise is that you've got a group of young adults traveling out to the middle of nowhere in Texas, and then slashing ensues. Which sounds a lot like a formula to one of your favorite movies, which you just mentioned.
Right.
Texas Chainsaw.
No, this actually was you guys were right on point. When I realized, you're hey, so when I decided to watch this one, and I was reading, I was like, oh, they know me. Aw, they know me. And it's about pornography and killing. It's I was like, oh, they know me.
I watched a movie with, a lot of sex scenes and murder, and couldn't think of anybody but you. I mean, like, how else would it work?
Perfect. Yeah.
But, so I guess you said the genre for this one is definitely slasher. But I'm curious about kind of other aspects of the movie. Did you feel like it was particularly well made? How was the acting and all that stuff?
No, I definitely did. I was honestly kind of surprised. I mean, it's no, like, it's not really a secret that I'm not like the biggest A24 fan. I feel like, I mean, it's not bad. They definitely put out some hits for sure. But I just wasn't always, a huge fan of it. And so I was just kind of, I don't know. I wasn't necessarily. So I went into this with lower expectations. I guess I should say, lowered expectations, and then when I started watching it, it was the exact opposite. Like, I thought the filming was great. There was a scene in it, just from the filmmaking aspect, that I thought was just like great. I'm sure it's been done before, but some blood got on some headlights, and it changed the color of the scene from, normal light to the red because of the blood, almost like a light filter, that was put on, and it just made it super intense. And I was like, oh, okay, that's like amazing. Like, I loved it. I thought that was great. I thought the music they had in this was really good too. And then, like Kid Cudi, it was his like horror movie debut. He's in it. I was very impressed with it. Very impressed with this film. Actually thoroughly enjoyed this film.
Yeah, so did you happen to catch who the director was?
Did not.
So it's Ty West.
Oh.
And when I read that, I thought, oh yeah. And then I looked at his Wikipedia page, and I thought, I didn't see any of these things. Why do I know the name? He actually directed one of the shorts in VHS.
Oh, yeah. That makes so much sense.
Yeah. And so if you look at the one that he did for that, this matches up like super well, I think, with his style.
Okay. Gotcha.
So
it looks like he had also was the director for like Cabin Fever 2, which I had seen. Like, there was a familiarity, if that's how you say it, to this film that I couldn't put my finger on, but now this makes sense. Like, this makes complete sense.
Yeah, and I think that, so like you were saying, going into an A24 movie, you had kind of low expectations. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me more about why that would be?
Yeah, I mean, so I know A24 has some of my favorite, horror films. It has, isn't that Midsommar, Hereditary, right? Those are both A24s. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if it was from like us looking through like all their films that they had. Like, we were kind of going through, like, looking at like what they have to offer, and it was just like, it was almost like it was like a copy of a couple, but also because they did the movie A Ghost Story.
Right.
And people don't forget.
Yeah.
So it was just like, I don't know. I just wasn't necessarily impressed looking through. I mean, I know they did The Witch too, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain, I guess.
Yeah, I think that with A24, a lot of times they look for weird movies, or maybe movies that wouldn't traditionally fit like normal Hollywood distribution. Mm-hmm. And so everything's a little different. And I think that sometimes because of that, they end up putting out horror movies distributing horror movies that are like using the horror to do something different. It's like telling a story with some horror elements around it to try and make it more impactful. And I think that because of that, a lot of times their movies can end up not actually being very horror, even though they get advertised that way.
Yeah.
And I think that's burned us a few times in the past. And so I definitely had kind of the same feeling going I mean, if I watched it, of thinking like, yeah, okay, well, this one's probably going to be a slow burn, and there's probably going to be like a deeper theme and point that they're trying to make and all that. And I think that is true, that there was like a deeper story to this one. Uh-huh. But also, this one I thought totally delivered on the horror from the slasher perspective.
No, without a doubt. And then, the thing too is like, I feel like everyone's entitled to the opinions. In my opinion, A24 has definitely changed. I mean,
yeah,
3 so far, not knowing like their whole, all the movies they've done, but like, I'm nothing but impressed with it. So. Yeah, I have no complaints on them now, but I think it was just like initially just like, I don't know, like seems a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and like we saw the movie Men.
Yeah.
And that one definitely fell into, know, the category of like, it was just kind of slow moving, and it had the payoff at the end, but it was definitely, I think, trying to make like a larger point. And I don't know that was really anywhere near as horrific as it could have been, or as I would have expected based on the way it was advertised.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyway.
I'd see that.
Yeah. So it sounds like on the whole, you would be a thumbs up and recommend this one to horror fans.
Yeah. Like without a doubt. I mean, there's one specific, scene in it that I think is just worth it alone. Kid Cudi's playing the guitar and he's playing Fleetwood Mac, and, one of the actresses is singing. It's so they're playing Landslide.
Yeah.
Which is, this acoustic, very pretty song. And it's going from like them just being in the cabin. This is before all the mayhem started. And just like still creepy stuff had happened. But you have this pretty song playing. He's playing guitar. Someone's singing. It's sounding real good. And then like it's cutting from them to like the old people. Like just like creepy images of like the house, like a whole bunch of dolls, like this old lady, I think she was just like getting undressed or something during that. You don't see anything, but it's just kind of going through it, and it's showing like one of the actresses, and she's singing really pretty, and all of a sudden it's like, there's a lyric in the song that's like, oh, and I'm getting older too, and it changes from her to the old lady looking at herself in the mirror. And, it's just like, for me, now I sometimes struggle with, I'm sure I would struggle with understanding Men and, the movie Witch, like the deep meanings, but this, I was like, okay, I got this one. I could do this one. I understand this. And it was just like a perfect setup. There's no like horror necessarily besides like the creepy images, but it was just like, just the way they kind of set it up, and it was dark and all that. It was just amazing. And then the other scene too. So the 2 scenes that specifically like makes this worth it. They're playing "Don't Fear the Reaper," and one of the guys is leaving because his girlfriend decided she wanted to get into the porn game, and he just lost it, and he decides he's leaving, so he goes in their van to leave them behind, and the old lady's just standing in front of it, and Don't Fear the Reaper's playing, and long story short, she kind of comes on to him, he rebuffs it or whatever, and she stabs him, and it's like brutal stabbing, and blood goes up on the headlights of the van because it's at nighttime, and it changes the whole scene. Like you just see her like stabbing, looking crazy in red, and it's just super, super intense. You have Don't Fear the Reaper going. It's just trying to wrap your head around it was impossible. But it was just super, super dope. So just from those 2 scenes alone, it's worth it to watch. But the whole movie itself was great. Like it was exactly what a slasher film is. It maybe didn't necessarily do anything new, but what it did do, even though it wasn't new, was like paid straight up tribute to slashers, and did it right. And being that that's one of my favorite subgenres of horror, that was why I was like perfectly fine with it.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I thought that was one that would have been fun to see in the theater, but I feel like it carried over quite well.
Yeah,
watching it at home.
Yeah, so. And I think for me it was, also going into it with the lower expectation was part of it. But like, this was definitely one of the movies that like I had no trouble just sitting there watching the whole time, not getting distracted or anything. which I think is kind of rare nowadays for being my ADD, but still it kept me attached the whole time.
Nice.
So, my turn to interview you, though.
Shoes on the other foot.
Yes, sir. And as people have come out and said, I'm the best interviewer in the world. And by people, I mean myself in the one where I interviewed you, which I think was last episode or the episode before.
Well, but you also, it's been said on a podcast that you were the best interviewer in the world.
That's true.
How many people can say that?
Doesn't matter by who. Yeah.
Yep.
So, Black Phone, this was one, I was actually kind of bummed. So the way this worked out was I was actually going to go, so I'm off for a couple of days. I was going to go watch it at my local theater. It was showing available when you and I talked this past weekend. And then when I checked on Tuesday, I was off on Wednesday. When I checked on Tuesday, I was like, it's gone. It's no longer in my theater. So decided I was just going to interview you on it. But when we were talking about this movie in itself, one of the things, I guess I should say that, we know the movie, right? Black Phone?
The Black Phone.
The Black Phone. My bad. Didn't mean to get too in depth already.
This interview is going well.
I'm sorry. I'm just looking at the picture and it's already creeped me out, so I was just going straight towards the meat. That's my bad. Listen, let's start fresh. So with the Black Phone.
Yes.
What were your initial thoughts, Daniel?
Well, as I said when we talked about it before on our 2022 horror movie preview episode, this was my second most anticipated movie of the year behind Nope. And part of that is that it was directed by Scott Derrickson, who did The Exorcism of Emily Rose and Sinister and Doctor Strange, the first one. And so I'm like, this guy's not going to do a low budget or a half-made movie. This is going to be a really high-quality one, and it should be pretty sold out on the horror side. And I was just expecting a really good, suspenseful kind of theater experience with this one. And so that's what I was thinking going into it.
Okay. Now, this is Blumhouse.
Yes.
Which has a pretty good reputation now, along with A24 for old Brice here.
Right, yeah.
I'm on the A24 train. Was the mask creepy to you in the film or not?
Absolutely, it was.
Good. Because if people don't know, if you don't know anything about Black Phone, just look at the poster for it. The one that you see the most. You see this guy with a creepy gray mask.
Yeah.
Looks like blonde or gray hair too. So he's just straight up gray with glasses on. Top hat, yeah. And has this big old smile like the Joker. Super creepy. Yeah,
it's a lot like what we talked about with Nosferatu.
Yeah.
Where it's you just have that striking image, and that can really set the tone for a whole movie. And they did a really good job with that on this one.
Yeah. So, hey, before we get in deep, can you do the overview of this?
Absolutely, I can.
Thank you.
I'm going to get real theatrical with it, too.
With your hands or just in voice?
Both.
Okay, well, we can't see. Okay. Do it. I support you.
Just trust me, it's happening.
Okay.
Set against the backdrop of a string of child abductions, The Black Phone focuses on a brother and sister who live with their widowed alcoholic father in 1978 in Denver. After the brother is abducted, he and the sister both start to become aware of their budding paranormal abilities. It's a race against time to try and rescue the brother before the grabber completes his deadly ritual.
That was intense.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So was the movie. That's what inspired it.
So, now that you did the overview, we get into the meat of this.
Yeah.
Do they all die?
They were all dead the whole time.
Oh my god. Sorry.
No, actually, so speaking of A24 movies, I told Sarah afterwards that this reminded me of a combination between Room and The Sixth Sense.
Okay. So, basically, Finney gets abducted.
Yeah.
And the previous kids who were abducted in ghost form help him get out, or help him try to get out?
Yeah, so he gets abducted. He's locked in a basement. This is all stuff you would see in the trailer, so I don't feel like it's a spoiler. And then basically the other kids that have been abducted have been murdered. And so you find out that both Finney and his sister have, like, are starting to awaken with paranormal abilities. And so his thing is, like, he's seeing glimpses of these other kids that have been there, or there's this phone in the room that's disconnected, and sometimes it rings and he can hear it, and then he answers, and, you know, one of the kids that had died before is on the other end and gives him a hint or a clue about, like, something that they did that either worked or didn't work in trying to get out. So meanwhile, the sister her abilities are that she's having dreams where she's getting, like, glimpses of where he is or what he's doing, or, like, maybe the outside of a house, or, like, the basement window that he's looking up out of, or stuff like that. And so it's kind of like there's the race of, like, him on the inside, like, trying to figure out how to get out, but then her on the outside trying to figure out where he is, based on each of their, like, connection to the paranormal world. And so I would say that is more the focus of the movie. And then occasionally the grabber, who was played by Ethan Hawke, who was really good, but also I think he took a lot of inspiration from the Joker, the most recent Joker movie.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, I think that was an effective way to play the character, but it was also, it felt like he was playing that character a little bit, you know. Yeah. But the images and the mask and the top hat and everything were really good for that. And he was just incredibly creepy the whole time. But I wish he would have been in the movie more.
Oh, okay. So he's not in it too much.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Because, like I said, the focus is more on kind of the kids and what they're doing to either try and get out. And it's a lot more like suspense and urgency, because, like, you know, he could come into the room at any moment. He just doesn't a lot.
Oh, okay. So one of the things was the phone on the wall in this. The black phone on the wall?
Indeed.
If it was disconnected, why didn't he just take it off the wall?
That's a pretty good question, yeah.
Okay. So, what were some of your favorite scenes?
My favorite scenes were definitely anything with the grabber. Uh-huh. There's one where the camera kind of goes, like, up the stairs, and you see he's just sitting in the kitchen with his shirt off, holding a belt, like, looking at the stairs in case the kid comes up. And that was just, like, super creepy. The way they used the music and the camera motion and everything, and then just the way he was there was, it was really, really effective. And then there were also a few times, because this movie did not have a lot of jump scares, but the couple that it did were super impactful just because you weren't expecting them, and they didn't overdo it. And so mostly that happened with the ghosts of the other kids, like, in the basement room where Finney was being held.
He changed his mask up throughout the movie too, didn't he?
Yeah, so there was, like, an upper portion and a lower portion that could kind of mix and match, so they both would, like, change throughout, and they never, like, addressed that or talked about it or anything. It was just, like, super creepy.
Whoa, okay. Oh, man. And overall filming of it, what'd you think? What'd you think of the film style?
Well, I made two lists.
Okay.
Short list. One was my ups and one was my downs.
Okay.
My ups were the performances from Ethan Hawke and Mason Thames, who played Finney. Mm-hmm. Also the visuals. I thought the whole thing was just, like, filmed and shot really, really well. And then the premise, like, just the idea of it is extra creepy. And to be able to portray that as, like, a really creepy horror movie with the characters, the way that they were, and sort of the filming, and with it being set in the 70s and kind of a little bit grainy looking, like it was just all pulled off, I thought, super well.
Nice.
But there were some downs, my man.
Oh, no. What were they?
The performance from Jeremy Davies, who played the dad,
yeah,
was distractingly bad.
Really?
In my notes, I said his acting was worse than his hair. And if you look at his character in this movie, you'll get what I mean. It was chorus heavy.
Ew.
Also down, not enough of the grabber.
Yeah, I can see that.
It was creepy that, like, the ghosts of the other kids were down there, but they were helping Finney. So they didn't... Those parts felt more, like, kind of creepy, but not scary. Like, it didn't feel like danger.
Yeah. Really,
all the danger came from the grabber, and he was in the movie a lot less than I expected. So I just felt like, on the whole, it wasn't as scary as the previews implied, because it definitely was a terrifying premise and lots of creepiness and some, like I said, some really good jump scares. But the paranormal parts were not the scary parts. And so it was more about, like, him trying to get out, and I felt like the grabber character didn't really get, like, developed a whole lot over time. But it's still a good movie. I enjoyed it.
You think they'll do a part 2?
I don't.
Because he died.
The way that it ended.
So you just told me he died.
I didn't tell you nothing.
Ooh, okay.
I told you in the beginning they were all dead the whole time, so it doesn't matter.
That's true. You're right. No, you're right. When you're right, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd watch this again, huh?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Then the only other thing I wanted to ask you about is, like, have you talked to anyone else that's seen this movie?
Mm-mm.
I haven't either, but it made $102 million at the box office, so I'm not sure why there isn't more buzz about it, I
actually saw that in on an article when I was reading up on this, and it was talking about, like, does this mean that movies in the theater are saved, kind of thing, just from this film alone?
Yeah.
Like, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, because this was not, like, the big Hollywood blockbuster. Yeah. I mean, this wasn't Thor or the new Doctor Strange or Spider-Man or anything. This was, like, kind of a niche, weird horror movie, and it still was successful and made, like, I don't know, not quite 10 times its budget. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, that's a really cool thing to see, because the theater experience, and this one especially, like, watching it in a room full of other people during some of those creepy scenes and jump scares, that just takes it to another level. And so this was a really good movie for that, and I'm glad I got a chance to see it.
Good. Well, I plan on watching it as soon as it's available, because it just seemed interesting.
Yeah.
I like bad guys with an interesting, mask, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that iconic creepy image.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I would recommend it. Like I said, right now, I mean, I think I saw it. I think there's like one showing every other day right now left on it here. So I can't imagine it'll be in theaters too much longer. And I think it'll be on streaming quite soon. So keep an eye out. It's worth the time.
Yeah. I'm glad you liked it. I plan on watching it. And I plan on watching X again. X also. Another time.
It was kind of nice that, I don't know, we got to both watch movies that we liked.
Yeah.
and didn't feel let down by them. So good job, 2022. We're racking them up this year.
Yeah. Yeah. And, also maybe the box office happened so much, or like they did so well, was because the real life is so terrible right now that anything, like, just get me away from this. That's my guess.
Yeah, escapism is a big business right now. Yeah. As we have a new COVID variant.
Yeah.
That can sidestep vaccines and continued ground war in Europe and recession and the hottest summer ever.
Pretty great. So just keep watching horror films.
No idea what people would be trying to escape from.
Yeah.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.